Well, hey everyone, this is Chris DiFurio with Keys to the Shop. Welcome to another edition of Shift Break. Today's episode is brought to you by La Marzocco, who's been making espresso machines by hand in Florence since 1927, and their commitment to quality, consistency, beauty in their espresso machines is why for the past nearly 100 years, they've been a household name in the coffee industry, the quintessential espresso machine for so many of us coming up in the industry. One of the great examples of how they innovate according to their clients' needs, their customers' needs, is the KB90 espresso machine, which introduced straight-in locking portafilters for ergonomics, built-in scales for accuracy of your extractions. It has the auto flush feature for increased cleanliness and workflow, and it's just one example of many espresso machines they have created to fit your cafe perfectly. Now, La Marzocco is available to help you make the right decision on an espresso machine for your business. All you need to do is reach out to one of their salespeople by emailing info@lamarzocousa.com, and they'll help guide you through that process. Also, check out their website at lamarzocousa.com. Today's episode is also brought to you by Espressly, who is creating custom-branded mobile apps for independent coffee shops just like yours to help you bring together the feel and the culture and image of your cafe with the convenience of mobile ordering, which is just a part of what people expect these days from coffee shops. Ever since COVID especially, it's really just taken off. And if you're thinking about having this convenience for your customers, Espressly is something you should definitely take a look at because it's a no-risk model. There's no setup or development fees. You get a drive-through payment scanner, receipt and label printing capabilities. All the data is stored in the app, and it integrates with some of the world's best payment processing systems, including Square. I definitely recommend if you're looking into mobile ordering and apps for your business, and you want something truly unique that is going to keep your customers engaged in your business, you look into getting an app through Espressly. To learn more and sign up today, go visit them over at espressly.co. That's espressly.co. Okay, everybody. Well, today we're going to be talking about debriefing. Now, debriefing is something you do after something has happened. So let's say you have gone through a rush and you want to talk to people about it after it happened to sort of figure out what happened and what could go better and what went well and things like that. That is debriefing. That is having a conversation after an event in order to sort of relive the event in a critical way with everyone around. And when I say critical, I don't mean only focusing on the problems. I mean just kind of acknowledging that what just happened, and let's be conscientious about it because let's be honest, when you go through a rush or an event that needs a debrief, it's usually an event that has everybody with their head down or just their brains engaged in the process. And we are trying to hold ourselves to a particular standard. And we've trained for this day. We've gone through onboarding and training, and we've been working on our different skill sets. And when the rubber meets the road, it is going to be either to standard or not to standard. And especially if you're talking about a group of people coming together to try to make something cohesive happen, customers ordering drinks, a group of people making those drinks for them. There's a lot to talk about. And unfortunately, I think what happens for most of us in a team setting is what happens to most of us as individuals. And that is we just want to get through the day. As an individual, I can tell you I've done this so many times where I feel like I just want to get through the day. I don't want to think about it anymore. I don't want to relive it. I just want to, go home and, watch YouTube, eat ice cream, or, do whatever and take my mind off of things. And that's all well and good. I'm not against doing any of that stuff by no means. But the absence of debriefing and examining what has happened means that we're not attaching any kind of meaning to it. And what happens does have a lot of meaning, even as much as we'd like to forget about it or get out of that stressful situation. Those things that happen during rushes or different, catering events or whatever the pressurized situation might be, will shape the way we behave in the future. They'll shape it either without us knowing how it's shaping us, or we will shape ourselves according to what we know happened. That's the difference between approaching something with intention and mindfulness and approaching something with kind of a dismissiveness about it, like, okay, we're through that, let's just go home and not think about it. If we collectively agree that we want to talk about what happened so we can make it better, I can't imagine how much better our coffee shops would be. And it might take just one person, and sometimes, in most of the times, maybe it's the manager or somebody who's paid to care a little bit more than others. Not saying other people don't care, but you like to think that the person who is in the management positions going to be initiating things like debriefing the team. And eventually, as this becomes a practice, people will, commit to themselves to debriefing. And if the manager falters, they'll bring it up, like, maybe we should talk about this. So people will start to hold each other accountable. But the thing about debriefing is that if you don't do it, it doesn't mean that those things just go away. Lots of different behaviors get cemented into place without us knowing about it. That's the problem. We had a shift break a while ago called "No News is Bad News," as in coming against the idea that no news is good news. In other words, if you don't hear anything bad happening from the cafe, then everything must be good. And we just can't assume that. Similarly, when we're in a pressurized situation, we can't just rely on everyone, high-fiving afterwards and going their way. I think we need more critical examination. And when we do that, we build camaraderie in the process because we relive the event together and we remember, yes, we did this. Even if it's imperfect, we still did it together. And now that we're in this conversation about it, and it doesn't have to be a long conversation, we're kind of solidifying the idea that we did this as a team. We're talking about it as a team because we want to shape what we do next, because we know this situation is going to come up again as a team. Another thing that debriefing does is it helps distribute power. We talk on the show a lot about how your power is not for you, about how it's a position in leadership. When you have management authority and ownership authority, your authority is supposed to be a conduit for power, to distribute power to others, to empower them to do good things, good work, resource them, right? And without debriefing, it doesn't allow anybody to make a difference. It doesn't give them a platform to express their thoughts about what just happened for themselves personally or what they observed in others as well. And it really cuts off the ability to distribute power well and your ability to lead, because you don't get to know the thoughts of people when it most matters. And so when you solve problems together, and when you even just give opportunity for other people to affirm each other in a formal way during a debrief from an event or something, you're giving them some authority and you're sharing power. So my recommendation is, whether you're a manager or not, maybe you're just somebody who wants to be more conscientious about what you do day in and day out. And I hope that's something that you want to adopt in your work on a daily basis, is coming to the table fully conscious of how you're speaking and acting and the why behind the what. It might sound like you need to be a superhuman to do this, and surely I think it's going to be hard to try to engage that way when really, for the most of us, it's showing up, doing the work, and then going home. But if you just practice it, just like when you in meditation, we talked about this actually with the last episode we had on Keys to the Shop this week, which you should listen to, episode 345, with Julian Langevin, who's the 2022 Cup Tasters champion. And in that conversation, Julian had mentioned how centering yourself in the competition and in tasting was so important. And I mentioned that in meditation apps, they have this point at which you return to. So they might ring a bell or something like that allows you to say, oh, that's right, I'm supposed to be concentrating on my breathing or whatever it is. And that's a really helpful practice, especially for those of us like myself who have technically, ADD or things like that. It's a helpful practice. Now, in the coffee shop, you are going to need to have different kinds of systems and institutions that help people center themselves. And I think debriefing can be one of those things that helps bring people to this point of recognizing, yes, that just happened, and we're centering ourselves to say, look, let's look at this and observe it rather than just letting it slide by unexamined. And it really helps. So again, like I said, if you're a manager or not a manager, you can still do this and talk with your coworkers. You can talk with your team, especially if you're a manager, after a shift, and you can affirm the great things that happened, and you can talk about the things that, maybe next time when this happens, we do this or that. It's a really useful practice in keeping short accounts. A lack of communication isn't something that's just on the doorstep of managers. I think teams have the ability to communicate with one another very well if they want to. And if we all individually in our different positions come with the idea that we want to have conversations about the work and what's happening in the coffee shop, then I think things like debriefing will just be one of many different types of conversations and systems that help keep these short accounts and help keep us in a healthy place relationally while we go through the various tensions of creating these coffee experiences. It's just part of who we are. It's part of what we do. We can't get rid of the tension, but if we manage ourselves well and we care for each other through the practice of things like debriefing, we can manage that tension and create something great over and over again and have it be something that is sustainable well into the future. So I hope that this episode has helped you, and I really appreciate you tuning in to Keys to the Shop. A reminder real quick, this Friday, that is tomorrow, there is the first installment of the Rate of Rise Live series. Roast Magazine and Keys to the Shop have been partnering on this Rate of Rise series focused on elevated conversations on roasting. And live at the SCA show in Boston, I was able to sit down with 10 amazing coffee professionals, roasters, and thinkers that we're going to be presenting in the next 3 Fridays here in the month of May, starting tomorrow with Peter Giuliano, Aurelie Barrera-Grodzki of Little Waves Coffee, as well as Carl Weinhold, who is the author of the book Cheap Coffee. So you don't want to miss that. Tune in tomorrow to Keys to the Shop. All 3 of those interviews are going to be broadcast, and you can watch the video recording of these episodes over on Roast Magazine's Instagram account at Roast Magazine. So again, thanks so much for joining me today, and I will see you here next week on another edition of Shift Break. From Keys to the Shop.